Well, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this August 31st, last day of Black August, August 31st edition of Smart Church at noon. Let me encourage you. I know that this is the very last day, but those of you who have the time, go in and Google, just a simple Google search this idea of Black August, and you will see how this month has many events and the births of many of our heroes in the struggle for freedom and liberation among our people. Black August, just that simple, and check it out. You've probably already heard of Black August, but go back in and give yourself a refresher course. Anyway, we are almost in the month of September, rolling right along. We are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for all of our friends who are across the country, even across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us in this our time of study. This is the time that we come together to learn more from each other. We teach one another. I am not a lecturer. I simply facilitate a conversation pertaining to a subject that is and we use our sacred scripture as the basis of our discussion. And so thank you for joining us if this is your first time. And as always, a shout out to the rebroadcast crowd. I know you are making a special effort to be a part of this conversation. We call it Smart Church because we have determined to be smarter as it relates to the Word of God. And so take out your note-taking apparatus, have your holy scriptures, and we'll walk through it. But while we are talking, please make sure to be involved in the chat box, even if it is just observation, because I promise you there's more teaching going on in the chat box than there is in what I am saying. That being said, we're continuing our discussion on power. And particularly, we're talking about the powers that be. And we are using Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 and 12 as our point of departure, our point of discussion. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. That's the one about the full armor of God. Hello to everybody. I see you all in the chat box. Good afternoon to everyone. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. I'm going to read from the New International Version. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For your struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That's the reading of God's holy and unchangeable word. Our focus, if you will, our focus today will be on the second of those entities in verse 12. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Last week we talked about the rulers, or King James and New King James say principalities. Today, our focus will be on the second, authorities, or your King James probably says powers, authorities. I see that Brother Fabian Johnson, as we're getting started, requesting prayer for Reverend Ronald. I'm not sure if that's Porsche or Porsche and his family, who is having surgery today. Looks like very serious surgery. Let's remember the Porsche or the Porsche family. Saints, I know that I'm talking to some praying people, so thank you all for obliging. And Brother Johnson, just know that we are praying with you today. All right. The authorities, or your King James may say powers. Now, remember, last week, as we talked about the powers that we must engage in this earthly realm, probably they are metaphysical, spiritual, some might say. that enter into our realm of living. Last week we talked about, the issue is not so much the flesh and blood that we call our enemies, but is in fact the systems and structures, and we can add to that institutions that are set against us, not necessarily the people, but the systems, the structures, the institutions that are set against us. And you'll remember our examples from last week. We talked about the injustice systems, where so many, right, so many human beings are caught up in a justice system that is not really just at all. I mean, you might get arrested for something that you didn't deserve to be arrested for, sit in jail because the bond system is unequally unjustly put together, go before a judge that if she or he is having a bad day, they will give you a sentence that you don't deserve. I mean, it's just jacked up. If you think about it, really for poor people, sometimes for humans in general, but really against poor people, having to deal with, we always use the example that on the outside, rich people are making millions, probably by now billions of dollars for selling weed. I mean, they're gonna call it cannabis and give us scientific reasons and put it in different forms. But and I know, right? It's weed, and we have sisters and brothers who are sitting in prison across racial lines, across demographics, who are sitting in jail for doing the very same thing. We also talked about the institutions that pretend to be for us, but quite often are against us. I know you have a list as long as our arm, right? Think about the marketing of corporations, right? That try to sell us on things that are just frankly detrimental to our health and to our living, right? The telling us, oh, the alcohol is going to make you cool, right? And all that pouring poison into our bodies. They used to advertise cigarettes against us. They don't do that anymore. But so on and so forth. We know that there are systems and structures and institutions that are set to wrestle against us, to put us in a position of surrender. But we also know that we serve a God that gives us power, even over and to deal with those kinds of things that are meant to hurt us. Issue is the speech that we believe concerning, right, these systems and powers, right? Because the speech will make us think that they're overwhelming too much. We can't handle it. Even when we think about the second, that was last week. This week, the word there, it says powers, but it really means authorities. And the Greek word is exousia. Exousia. It is spelled in our alphabet, it is spelled EXOUSIA. EXOUSIA. And it means authority, right? The authorities is what this text says we wrestle against, not against people, flesh and blood, but against authorities. And this is really about positions, right? These are the positions. And of course, we know people occupy the positions, but these are really about the positions to make that are there to make sure that the systems, the structures, and the institutions keep the status quo going, keep the metaphorical machine moving, right? Many Black people are upset or were upset with President Barack Obama, right? Number 44. But the truth of the matter is, he did his job. The job of that position's job is to keep the machine moving forward. And so he did his job. Yes, we got the Health Care Act. Thank God, right? For the Affordable Care Act. That was for the people. But at the end of the day, it's the position. And the position of the President of the United States is to keep the machine moving forward, or keep it going, keep it running, right? And there's so many others, right? that we think we make it personal or make it about personalities and claim we don't like this one or that one, or we hate this one or that one, when it's really the position of whatever, CEO, president, supervisor, whatever it is, it's the position that is put in place to keep the systems and the structures and the institutions where they are. I know I'm right. I know I'm right because people will be replaced. People will come and go, but it's the position that is there, right? Again, it's the position that is there to keep it going. Exousia. Thank you, Sister Nancy on Facebook. Exousia, Exousia, and that is authorities, right? So the scripture says that we wrestle not. There's a word I want you to focus on right now. We wrestle not against. Circle that one in your text. The underline, highlight that one. The word against. Right? We'll read past it, but it's significant for us. And at noontime, we're trying to do a study of what the word actually says. Tonight we'll discuss it in our amplified. It is more thematic, right? But for noontime, we're trying to see what the word says. Yeah, he had to fight tooth and nail. You're exactly right, Sister Minnie Ross. She said he fought tooth and nail to get the Affordable Care Act. Absolutely right. So against. So the against lets us know that there are some things and some people that are set in our way such that, well, let me put it this way. Their job is to keep us from advancing. The opposition's job is to try to keep us in a box, or to make us feel like and think that we're stuck and we will never move. So when we talk about principalities, when we talk about powers, rulers of the darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places, their job is to make us think that there is no possible way, right? There is no way. They block the way. Now, I'm not talking physically. I'm talking psychologically. They block the way in our minds. I can't be healed. There is no hope for me. There's no way I can get out of this thing, or this is too much for me. All of that stuff, right? Psychologically, their job is to block the way. It's always been this way. It's never going to be any different. Reverend Sims on YouTube says we have to learn how to think outside the box. What's up, Brother TJ Shavers? Good to see you, brother. So check it. Our elders who had no theological training knew that that was a lie, because we have heard them say, and they taught us to believe, that we serve a God who specializes in making a way out of no way, right? And so when we are dealing with this kind of speech, if it's in our minds or our eyes are looking at this thing, we're looking at it on paper and on black and white, it looks like there's no way we're going to lose this battle. Whatever the case, this thing is going to overwhelm me. The doctor says, gives you the report I can't hear. That's principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of this age, spiritual wickedness in high places, blocking, right? Blocking our way, becoming the obstacle that is meant to stop you from reaching your objective or achieving your goal or feeling like you can climb out of your situation. And your mama and them just simply said, but God makes a way where there is no way. Or we used to say here, previously there was no way, right? It used to be that there was no way, but since God is on it, we know that God will make a way against. Don't read past that, right? Because their whole job is to be against, to provide opposition. So check it. Paul says part of the remedy to that is to put on something called the whole armor of God. And of course, we know he's not talking literally and physically. Paul says there's a mindset, right? There's Jesse Spears, who is an ancestor now, used to say, there's a belief system, right? That we have to maintain because it is our way of thinking and our belief that will fuel us and provide us with the knowledge that will help us to deal with that which stands against us. So he talks about the whole armor of God. Here is where that is significant. As we always say, when we are studying, we don't study to see what it means to us today as much as we study to see what the word meant to those to whom it was addressed, right? So for Paul the writer, he's addressing people who live in Ephesus who know what it is to deal with those things that he listed in our text, those four things that he listed, because right there's the worship of Diana, there's all kind of spirits moving around in that city, and right systems and structures and institutions were meant to put money above everything. That was equivalent to our modern day Wall Street. And so when Paul writes and talks about putting on the whole armor of God, the people to whom it was written, the people in Ephesus would have first heard and recognized that in their culture, as Melina and Pilk remind us, to put on someone else's clothes is to suggest that that person has given you authority to act as they would act. Let me say that for you again. In their culture, in the first century Mediterranean world, when to put on someone else's clothing meant that that person was giving you authority to act the way that they would act. Oh, I'm checking. I'm slipping over here. I know you all are already teaching. Sister Nancy LaMelle on Facebook reminds us, right, that we wrestle against whatever tries to block our way from advancement. Sister Yvonne Sutton on YouTube, we have to fight spiritual battles in our lives as believers. Always, sister. Reginald Sims on YouTube reminds us this whole armor of God thing. Think of it as being suited and booted, ready for whatever comes my way. I love it. That's what I'm trying to tell you all. Watch that chat box. There's some teaching going on there. So check it. So I'm putting on the whole armor of God. In their minds, they would have also thought about all this talk about armor, breastplates, sandals, swords, shields. Their minds would have gone to the Roman soldiers, right? Who were the police for the empire, right? Roman soldiers everywhere you turn. Their minds would have thought about the image of this soldier who is the best equipped, right? The helmet, the shield, the breastplate, the sword, the sandals to go out to address the enemy. Their mind would have gone to this valiant warrior who was the best equipped, right? Best prepared fighting machine on this earth at the time. Their mind would have gone to the one that everybody knew that when a Roman legion showed up, it meant trouble for whomever they were assigned to put in their place or to attack. They're thinking the Roman soldier. You probably have already heard that in your teaching and in your learning over the years. But you know what it made me think about? That Roman soldier, best equipped, uh, best supported, best prepared of their day, and how it is that our best equipped and our best prepared won't even fight for us. And I mean, as humans, we're not just talking about one race, one demographic, one ethnicity. I mean, as humans, the people who are trained, the people who sit in the positions. These are the people who will complain about student loans being forgiven, but they had their PPP loans forgiven. These are the people who went to the schools and were trained by the best elders and had the elders to sacrifice for them. And they are so selfish, right? That all they can do is think about them and those who will benefit around them and their friend, kind of like Solomon, right? We celebrate Solomon for being the wisest, but we don't read closely enough to recognize that the book of Samuel talks about how Solomon conscripted people to work for his good and for his friends' good, but the people were everything they had to sacrifice for it all. We celebrate Mansa Musa, the richest, the African, right? With all of that gold, the richest man whoever lived, most people claimed, right? The Portuguese saw him and said, we got to get what he has, but we don't ever talk about the people who had to go in the mines to dig the gold out for Mansa Musa so that he could parade around with all and give away all of that gold. And so what we talk about is, the people who are put in positions to help us, who are trained and prepared to help us. It's a shame that they won't do what they can for humanity, for people. But look at what the text says, right? You have the authority to put on the whole armor of God. I think we have enough people in here that will help us to teach. Not only does God give us the authority, but God gives us armor. But God gives us armor that will fit us for the season or the situation we find ourselves in. I think you already recognize, and I hope that you will help and that you will teach other peoples in your walk in life, right? As you move in the marketplace, that God will give us what we need for the situation where we do have to face the principalities, the powers, the rulers of the darkness of this age, the spiritual wickedness in high places. For every situation, our armor will fit us, not to be on the defensive, but to be on the offensive, such that we can accomplish, such that we can climb, such that God will exalt us to where he wants us to be. Sister Stewart and Brother Stewart are saying to us, the flesh and blood enemies are demons over whom the devil has control. They are not fantasies. They are very real. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. We better take it seriously, right? We better take this opposition seriously. So look at it. Think about it, and you ought to write down 1 Samuel chapter 17, 38 and 39. 1 Samuel 17, 38 and 39, as we're talking about this issue of authority, armor, right? Armor that fits us. Some of you remember that in the story of, we call it David and Goliath, that we learned all of our lives, that before David went on the battlefield, the king at the time, Saul, tried to give David his armor. Here, take my stuff now. I always laugh at that because Saul is the king. He's supposed to be protecting the people. But Saul, who should be leading the battle, is the one who takes his stuff off to give it to the little boy. That's a sermon for another time. But Saul takes off his armor, gives it to David. And in 1 Samuel 17, 38 and 39, even the little boy David recognized, I can't do nothing. I can't do nothing with your armor. I had to use what fits me, what I know. David had never been into battle in Saul's armor. David didn't know anything about fighting with all of that armor on, but David knew slingshots and rocks, right? And so, what we have to recognize is that if somebody is trying to give you their armor, it will likely be ill-fitting. But God will give you what you need when you need it, that's going to fit your situation so that you will come out victorious. That's right. 1 Samuel 17:38 and 39. God gives us armor that fits us. So check it. You know that this is our noon. We try to be 30 to 40 minutes. And I think we're about right on time now. And we'll come back tonight or this evening for the larger conversation. And so the record is, our fight is not against flesh and blood. As Brother Stewart says, our fight is against the enemy, the devil. It's a good word to use, the devil that controls them, right? And Paul says God has equipped us to deal with the enemies because he gives us something called the whole armor of God. I want to go back and check that again. Now look at it. He says we battle with the systems, structures, and institutions, but we also deal with the positions that move the metaphorical levers to make sure that those systems and structures and institutions do what they're supposed to do. Exousia, authorities. Dr. Anag Asumag says to us or reminds us that what is really talking about is authorities that in the earthly realm and according to earthly or human protocols are not to be challenged, right? Or not to be ignored. Think about that. We all have them where we're told that this is it and you don't question it, right? But think about power in the hands of those positions that can go really wrong. We have a few biblical examples. Don't question. You just do what I say. That's the very thing that allowed David to rape Bathsheba, right? Authorities. That's the very thing that allowed not only did David rape Bathsheba, but then he had her husband killed, and nobody questioned the king until the prophet went to the king and said, "You are the man." That's the thing that allowed Abraham to rape Hagar, right? And his wife is the one that told him to do it. He's the master, she is the slave. I just do what I want with you, and nobody will question me or challenge me on it. That's the very thing, if you think about it, that allowed the king to demand a census so that he could raise the taxes that put Mary and Joseph on the road when Mary was pregnant, that got them into Bethlehem, right? So that Jesus could be born in Bethlehem. Authorities. I don't care where you are. You go to your birth city so that you can be counted. But you know what you meant for evil, God meant for good. We know that story, right? But authority is the very thing that sent Paul and Barnabas, right? They were authorized to go to the Gentiles, right? To make sure that what they believed and what they were doing was in line with what Jesus had taught them. Authority. Now, I want you to think about this, though. We see exousia all around us every day. In fact, I would say it is pervasive. It all around our lives is what perpetuates the myth of white supremacy. Now we know that we say the myth on white supremacy on purpose, because there's no such thing as white supremacy. There's no such thing as black supremacy. We are human beings, right? But this myth, this lie of white supremacy is all around us. When you think about how education is used to support it, right? To teach anybody that is not a white, straight, male Christian that there is something wrong with them. Our laws are used to make sure that it stays in place. If you really think about it, if you think about even our religion, we finally start to take those pictures of a white Jesus down in our homes and in our churches. But white supremacy is all around us as an authority. And we are told you can't question it. You better leave them white people alone. You know, fear is used in the church. If you don't worship this white Jesus, you going to hell. All of that kind of foolishness. But check out how God uses authority for our good. Remember, God gave Adam and Eve authority. Gave them what the Old Testament calls dominion, right? You're in control over all of this because I told you you are. Brother Johnson said blacks and white supremacy against each other. Exactly. Division where there doesn't have to be. Sister Irma Jones on YouTube says white supremacy is a taught hate. We're all the same in God's eyes. Exactly. Right? But it's all, you go in the grocery store. It's just everywhere. It's pervasive in our lives. It's authorities. But God, as I was just saying, God helps us to stand against that stuff. Gave Adam and Eve dominion, just like he gives us dominion over our lives, over what we call our kingdom. Think about it. Our Nubian Redeemer, Jesus, once he was resurrected and became the Christ, what did he say? But all authority is given to me in heaven and on earth, in heaven above and earth beneath. Authority used in the right way. And let us not forget that me, we are included, that God has given us authority. Luke chapter 10, verse 19, I'll read it for us. Luke chapter 10, verse 19, behold, I give you authority. That's Jesus talking to us, to the disciples. I give you authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and all of the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Authority, evil tries to use against us, but God flipped it and shows how he has given us authority over evil. You're going to want to write down Luke chapter 10, verse 19, and meditate on that one before we come together tonight. Give it a moment if you have a chance before we come together tonight. This conversation is going to be expanded because what we're going to talk about is how we deal with this issue of the authorities, right? We talk about white supremacy, but that's not the only issue around us, right? There are global issues that we just move on in our day that are having an effect on the way we think and on the way we move. But God shows us how to deal with it. Thank you all so very much for being a part of this noon time together. And we'll be back tonight, 7 p.m., same time, same station, that is, to continue in this discussion. We appreciate all of you. Thank you, brothers, for your participation in Men's Day. You'll be hearing from Brother Donald Lewis, I think that's this evening before Smart Church, to express what we did and how it worked out. And also, if you were not at church or you just have not had time to give your tithes, your offerings, your gift to the work of ministry that we are doing here to change people's lives, this is a good time. You can use your device to do so by texting or by going to Cash App, $ Elm Grove, BC. Or if you're the one who uses the envelope, please know that we are 24 hours. You can use the slot that is next to the glass doors on the Zion Street side. Thank God for every one of you. 7 p.m. tonight. Let's come together and talk about it. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Peace.